The ceasefire holds in place, but the war is far from over. I want to welcome you to a special episode of Pod for Israel. I have with us Captain Matan Ohana. He's the leader of SOFAN, our IDF soldiers ministry and discipleship of IDF soldiers. But I think probably one of the biggest battles that's going on right now is really the battle over the hearts and minds of our nation, and really beyond our nation. It's to the world right now. There's propaganda. There's all this stuff being said about Israel and about the army and about the Palestinians, about this whole conflict. And there's a very short supply on truth, it seems, in social media.
True. Yeah. Greg, maybe we can take a step, and look at things on more macro perspective and talk about, today all right, let's talk about the culture. We're living in a postmodern culture, Everyone have his own narrative. Truth is not something that everyone have his own facts to base his truth and his narrative.
Right.
And the media now today, with this conflict that we are now, that we have in the last 2 weeks, you see just dozens of stories that everyone have his own narrative, everyone interpreting the facts in a different way, and it's in one hand it's very sad, but in the other hand it's very important also to put the truth forward, or when we're saying even truth is that what we as a believers should do in these circumstances, in what happened, to really put also our line, our border, what's our point of view to this situation that happened.
Right. And so like what Dr. Soref shared with us, it was a great exhortation. I really encourage you to watch that video that he just shared about, which side are you on? Of course, it sounds divisive, and that's what the media wants us to do. It wants us to divide, that you're either 100% with the Palestinians or you're 100% with the IDF, and you can't be both.
Yeah.
That's bull. That's factually untrue.
Yeah.
And when the reality is that God's called us to love both.
Yeah.
And so, even if I'm supporting fully, the IDF in their current war, like you said, it's a just war. We're fighting against terrorism. We're fighting against people who are shooting at innocent civilians. You have to stop that. There's this false equivalency they say of, well, Israel. And like in the media today, there's a lot of different celebrities and pundits that are going out and saying, well, Israel's the big guys. They're the big boys. Yeah. And no one can defeat them. And so they shouldn't strike back so hard. Why is there so many people dead on the Palestinian side and so few dead on the Israeli side? But first of all, this isn't a big brother versus the little brother in a fight, and where the big brother just needs to not hit the little brother back because he's going to win the fight. That's a one-on-one comparison. Yeah. You're talking about the Arab girl that was killed with her father in Lod by a rocket.
Yeah.
She wasn't big enough
by Hamas terrorist organization rocket
to defend herself from the terrorist Hamas rocket that flew and struck her and her father.
Exactly.
She wasn't big enough to stop that rocket. So this whole equivalency of the big boy versus the little boy is so incredibly just false and broken from the start. It's crazy.
Exactly.
First of all, on the side of should we even talk about these things in social media, because it brings such division.
I want to talk about the social media. It's important also to the audience. I'm sure it's well-known knowledge today, but the algorithm of Facebook, of YouTube, of the viral videos, usually those videos becoming viral because it's one narrative, one radical story. The videos that seeing people killing each other, or the hateful videos. This algorithm working, if you are a liberal person, left wing, usually that's what you will see, and that's how you're looking at the world and if you are a right wing, usually you will see the videos that are talking about your perspective and your point of view on life, and that's what's happening with the media now.
Basically it's creating this megaphone.
Yeah.
And so instead of you hearing the balanced perspective from both sides, which we really need to hear both sides. It's good for us to get a wide perspective, so we can really get down to the truth. It's really propaganda is being shoved down the throats
Yeah.
And really, where's the source of it all coming from? And if we look into Sheikh Jarrah, if we look into what happened on the Temple Mount with the riots, if you look into the facts, if you just do it, it doesn't take long for you to dig down and to see the real roots and the history of these different clashes.
And I want to, what Dr. Ayers said in the video, I thought it was great, because for us as born again believers, Israeli Jewish believers that living in Israel, we know the situation is more complicated in one hand,
Right.
and we know facts because we're living them 24/7 in the other hand. But behind all that, you can take your narrative and your story to whatever you want. If sin is still existing in the world, what I'm trying to say is that the source of it all, it's the human sin.
Exactly.
If there is racism in towards Muslims and terrorist organization to Israel, of course they're shooting missiles. They want to destroy Israel out of the country. If there is hateful to us as born again believers, and people that believing in Jesus, Jewish people, from the Orthodox people, from radical right in Israel, of course we see this hatefulness. We see this antisemitism towards from both
Jews,
sides, and the source is the sin.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I wanted to connect to what El said. Our mission, our how we're looking at as a born again believers and believers in Israel today is that our mission is to proclaim, promote, and push
Right.
the gospel and Jesus. That is the only solution to everyone in Israel, to all the Jews and everyone, and to all of the Muslims in the Gaza Strip. That's the only true cure and results. And that's, I'm waking up every day and I'm serving, in our soldiers department at One for Israel. We're serving soldiers, but what we're doing is not encourage them in a very earthly manners, or I don't know, issues. We're teaching
go and
them
fight and kill them, and it's not. It's not the.
We're teaching them the word of God. We're telling them their mission is to promote the gospel and to share and to be light and testimony to their brothers and sisters in their bases, in their units. And now, they're in a fight against terrorist organization.
Right.
We I was an officer in the special forces in 2014 in the Gaza war, and I'm doing a lot of reserve duty, so I'm a part of the army. So Israel usually fighting, and I would say all the time, fighting just wars against terrorist organization. Is there people that sometimes is there people that doing mistakes from the, of course. In the other side, is there people that want to live in peace? The majority of the Arab people, the Arab Israeli citizens and the citizens of Gaza wants to live in peace. So what we want is to bring the gospel to those people.
And all it only takes a small amount to spread that sort of hatred. You're talking about like it's only like there's a bunch of professors who said there's around like 5% are the ones that are spouting off the whole radical thing and pushing this kind of vicious us versus them complex. And the majority are happy to be here. Are happy to live. They understand they're blessed, and they're just wanting to live at peace. They're wanting to work in their job and raise their families.
Exactly.
And it's not. But what's scary is you see this change in attitude from the propaganda, pouring through the society today. And again, we also like you said, in every society you deal with sin. In every society, we deal with levels of racism and levels of hatred and levels of anger. Every society, because of sin. And so, again, you have to make the comparison again and say, okay, there's Ku Klux Klan and there's neo-Nazis in America. Does that make America a neo-Nazi Klan-based society? Of course not. They're rejects of society. They're pushed off to the side. There's, likewise, there's the same in Israel society. There's people who have gotten embittered and angry. Maybe their family's been killed in various attacks and stuff like that, and that made them bitter and hate.
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? That doesn't make Israel a racist society. You have to look a fair, balanced view of the truth.
Yeah.
And again, that's not taking sides. And I think that the thing that we have to watch out for today is the pressure that's on us in society. We talked about social media creating these megaphones of the right wing or the left wing or whatever narrative. And it just, you only hear in your echo chamber. But likewise, we have to watch out that we're not getting sucked into that sort of a trap.
Exactly.
That we remember the gospel is the number one thing. That's the one thing that's going to make change.
So, look at it as a parable, all right? Today, what the media is doing is, it's the branches, but not the roots.
Yeah.
The roots is the sin. If you hate, if you're anti-Semitism or you hate Jews all over the world, you will promote, and the media will give you those kind of videos that's showing one side of the story.
Yeah.
If you are anti-Semitic towards Arabs or Muslims, the media will give you this videos. But that's the branches, because they're making money out of it. But the roots of it all is the sin. So if sinful people wants to create those videos, if sinful people wants to do terrorist attack, if sinful people wants to hate Muslims or Arab people because of their all kind of things that happened to their life before or some kind of reasons they doing it. So what we as believers really feeling calling to do, especially in Israel, especially in those times, is to push the gospel and trying to solve this issue, or through bringing the gospel and healing the roots of the situation.
Amen.
Because if there will be more believers from both sides, I'm sure we will not even getting to. There will not be content to those videos and to these narratives that been pushed and sponsored by people that just want to create more conflict and getting one side of the story. They want to see
this region burn, and that's the thing is we have to understand that like there's a huge empire of. You could say the axis of Iran or the axis of evil, whatever, but it's like they want to see this region burn. They don't care about the people at all.
Exactly.
It's like you look at, it's like, I love and support the Palestinian people. Well, what does that actually look like?
That's a good question.
Does it just mean I just post on Facebook all these different pro-Palestinian posts? Or does it mean that I'm doing something?
So I'm sure
what am I actually doing? Am I just following a trend? And that's just really, I guess, a real big sickness in our society today. It's so hot right now to be pro-Palestinian, and so I'm going to post a bunch of I love Palestine, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. What have you actually done for them?
Yeah.
And if you're pro-Palestinian, if you're pro-Arab, and you want the best for those in Gaza, what is the best for those in Gaza? Is Hamas the best?
So, we in Israel...
I mean, what are they doing to the people in Gaza? What has Hamas done?
So, maybe I will say just that in One for Israel, we're working as brothers and sisters, Jews and Arabs, with each other 24/7, and we love each other, and there is no difference. So, that's just a micro example of how born-again believers in Israel can live in unity and love and just together.
Right.
If you're looking at Israel... 90% of the Israeli Arab living a happy, peaceful life. Even 95% of them living good life in Israel as Arab Israeli citizens. There's some of them feeling sometimes that they are second-class citizens. Yeah, because if you want to look at it like that, you can. But the majority living peaceful life. What happening in Gaza? Yeah, it's a terrorist organization known by all the countries of the world as terrorist organization that have no rights in any other countries of the world. That took over the Gaza Strip in 2006, killed their own brothers and sisters in a bloody revolution that they did, and since then the majority of the Gaza Strip is held 90% held by terrorist organization, and they also want to live in peace and in peaceful life next to the Israeli state.
The people do.
The people do. The leaders, no. So that's a terrorist organization. So if you ask me, the fighting against terrorist organization that want to kill innocent people, that's a just war from our point of the Israeli country.
Yeah.
But now you ask how to love them. Or what we're doing. So we're fighting against the terrorist organization, but what we as believers from in all over the world needs to do is pray for them. Amen. Pray that this hateful regime, terrorist organization going to fall, and maybe a new and healthy government going to come out from there. Pray for their humanitarian situation, because the Hamas, when they getting concrete and steel, they building tunnels and bases in fire rockets, to shoot on Israel, and not building schools or hospitals. So they are in a very bad situation. And what we as believers, or what we as One for Israel doing, we're believing, like I said, the roots. Let's push the gospel to the Gaza Strip. Let's bring them the gospel. If there will be more believers in Gaza, that will be more light and testimony, and things will be cured from the roots.
Right, and so even like Carlos has seen many Gazans come to faith. Son of a sheikh, and we've seen time and time again that the Lord will reach even the most radical jihadis. Yeah. And even as we shared in from Jihad to Jesus, this last testimony, these guys that were filled with hatred and murder, we have to view them from God's eyes.
Yeah.
So even the most radical terrorist who has, just his heart filled with hate, God might be pulling this man out like a Saul, like that he will become a radical warrior for Yeshua, that he will be, turned from being the enemy of Israel to a lover of Israel, from the enemy of God to he's going to spread the gospel
and in
of peace.
And in the other side, we have Jewish brothers and sisters born again that weren't believers, and they hate Palestinians, or they hate Muslims because things that happened to them in the past, or someone in their family got killed by a terrorist attack. And when they came to faith, they love their brothers, our brothers and sisters. They praying for the Palestinians. So again, and I want to connect again to what Erez said in the video, that on what side you are. We as One for Israel wants to promote the gospel and pray for everyone. Yeah. Right.
And so that's the challenge, and that's the challenge that you have running this ministry to IDF soldiers. Is really, I would say the core component of your ministry is discipleship. You're in these incredibly difficult. Just think about if you're an IDF soldier serving, you're on the front lines down over by Gaza.
You're now in the operation,
the things are hitting all day long. The frustration, the anger you feel. We need to pray for our soldiers. We need to pray for these believers to shine as lights. I mean, it's pressure. You said, in 2014, you were a soldier. You served the army down there in the 2014 operation.
Yeah.
I mean, is it difficult to maintain that peace and
maybe
love
I can,
for your neighbor?
Just in 1 minute, just share that I was in the fighting forces in the operation, so I saw the things with my own eyes, and we're talking about dozens of scenes like that, hard scenes where civilian and innocent people are being held by terrorists just as human shields. So I saw it from my own eyes. In the one hand, you have to fight against them because it's just war, because you're fighting against people that wants to kill innocent people. In the other hand, you're praying for those people. So I had so many conversations during the war, and I could promote the gospel in my own unit as someone that we're fighting against terrorist organization, but I love the people in Gaza. I'm praying for them. I want them to live peaceful life. I want them to know that we don't hate them. And again, I think Jesus is the only answer in this situation.
One of the struggles that our soldiers are facing, especially as believers, is they hear from other people, and they hear the noise of these pundits and these guys on the media today saying, if you really are a good person, you're not going to fight any wars.
Yeah.
You're not going to fight a war, and especially you're not going to fight against these outmatched, outgunned Palestinians. Come on, look at, again, that sort of false equivalency of like, you're the big guy, you shouldn't fight back.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be attacking. We shouldn't be in there. Just let them do their thing. Again, that those little children who were killed in this conflict, the people who died already, they weren't big enough to fight back against those rockets. It's our moral duty to fight in the war and to stop the ones who would take lives. Just like a police officer who's on the streets and there's a man that pulls a gun on an innocent civilian.
Yeah.
It's his duty to take down the killer because he's going to kill and he's going to continue. Yeah. And so it's in the same way. I mean, it's not one side or the other. As a soldier, you weren't running in with hatred towards the Palestinians. It was actually your heart was full of love for the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
And compassion for the plight that they're in.
Exactly. And
because they're really prisoners of this regime. They're prisoners of this terrorist regime.
And maybe just, another maybe last thing for our audience is that when they're looking at one side narrative that trying to push, values or one side of the story, just to remember that it's more complicated. Remember that the believers in Israel, we feeling that our calling is to promote the gospel and pray for our Israel enemies, the terrorist or this terrorist organization. Pray for the innocent people in both sides, and also pray for our leadership in Israel. Amen. That have the wisdom how to know to lead in this very sensitive weeks, but in the upcoming time when this terrorist organization also promoting the media a lot of hateful videos in the Israeli Arab society. So a lot of the riots inside Israel came from that, and so that we will have healing and unity back again.
Right.
And just people will find Jesus, because this is the only true medicine for this situation that we have here in Israel and for the Palestinian people. Yeah.
Amen. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we are praying for you and your ministry in this time, and praying for our nation, and also praying for those in Gaza as well. So, Lord, we just ask that you would guard our hearts and guard our minds in this time, that your truth would prevail, and, Father, that you would seek to save those who are lost, and that those whose ears would be open to the gospel. We just ask that you would save them, even in this time of conflict and battle. We know only true peace comes through Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.